There comes a time in every woman's life when she must make a choice, not between right and wrong, but between what is easy and what is eternal. She stood at a crossroads. On one side, a man who promised her comfort, companionship, and love. On the other side, a calling that whispered not to her ears but to her soul. You see, a woman who chooses God over a man does not reject love. She chooses a higher love, one that is not bound by conditions, betrayal, or need. She aligns herself with something infinite, something unshakable. Success did not come to her in the form of applause or attention. It came in the quiet moments of alignment, of peace, of knowing she was living in harmony with her inner truth. Each day she rose with the weight of solitude, and yet her soul grew wings. She stopped performing, started becoming. The world tells you that choosing a man means stability, identity, and worth. But when a woman chooses God, she finds that those things were never given by others. They were always within her. Here are moments in a woman's life where decisions cannot be made by logic alone. The external world may offer advice, expectations, or even pressure, but none of it touches the sacred place where the real answer lies. The soul. That sacred place is where inner alignment dwells. Inner alignment is not about perfection, nor is it about having everything figured out. It is the state of being where your soul, your heart, your mind, and your actions are in harmony. It is when you walk not according to the noise of the world, but to the rhythm of something deeper, a divine guidance that speaks without words and waits patiently to be heard. For the woman who chooses God over a man, her decision does not come from rebellion or bitterness. It comes from this alignment. It comes from understanding that no relationship, title, or attachment is worth sacrificing the integrity of one's soul. This is not arrogance. It is sacred clarity. The world we live in constantly demands that women prioritize external validation from an early age. Women are taught that their value lies in being desired, chosen, or attached to a man. But what if the ultimate power lies in being chosen by something eternal, not temporary? What if a woman's worth was not measured by whether a man loves her, but by whether she is in alignment with the truth she carries inside? Inner alignment starts with honesty. It begins the moment a woman stops pretending. She stops pretending that she's okay when she's breaking. She stops pretending to be someone she's not just to be accepted. She stops performing roles that don't match her spirit. In this space of honesty, she hears the whisper of God again, not the God of religion or fear, but the God of love, presence, and purpose. She begins to realize that love offered in misalignment is not love. It is attachment dressed as affection. A man can offer her flowers, attention, even devotion, but if it asks her to betray her calling, to dim her light, or to walk away from her deeper path, it is not love. It is a distraction. To be inner alignment means to move from within. It means her yes means yes, and her no means no, not because of fear, but because of deep knowing. She may walk away from the very thing she once begged for, not out of pride, but out of reverence for the woman she is becoming. She honors her growth more than her longing. Inner alignment is not loud. It does not argue, plead, or beg. It simply knows. It allows her to walk away from comfort to follow clarity. It gives her the strength to release the familiar in pursuit of the divine. She doesn't need to explain her path to others, because when a woman is aligned, she is at peace. Even in chaos, the world around her may not understand. People will ask, why would she leave a man who loved her? They cannot see what she sees. They cannot feel what she feels. Because while the world looks at appearances, she has learned to look inward. The man may have been good, but the path God has called her to is holy. This is the power of inner alignment. It gives a woman discernment. It allows her to differentiate between what is good and what is God, between comfort and calling, between emotion and intuition. It frees her from making decisions out of fear of being alone. Because when she is aligned, she is never alone. There is a sacred loneliness that comes with inner alignment. not because she is unloved, but because she refuses to settle for love that costs her purpose. She does not just want love. She wants love that leads her deeper into truth, not further from it. And here lies the secret: when a woman chooses inner alignment, she becomes magnetic, not to everyone, but to everything that matches her truth. The friendships she attracts, the opportunities she welcomes, the peace she feels. None of it comes from chasing. It comes from being. She is rooted, not restless. Whole, not hungry. Inner alignment also transforms how she defines success. No longer is success measured by society's checklist: a ring, a title, a house, a man. Instead, success becomes the quiet knowing that she is where she is meant to be. It is the sacred satisfaction of walking in purpose, even if no one else understands. It is the calm that floods her spirit when she chooses God over approval, over desire, over fear. There will be nights where she doubts her decision. There will be times when loneliness feels heavier than strength. But even in those moments, inner alignment speaks: stay, trust. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. The soul never lies. When she listens, she is led. Eventually, the world around her begins to notice. Not because she is loud, but because she is glowing. There is a radiance in a woman who has chosen alignment over attachment, a quiet fire in her eyes, a steadiness in her steps. She is not moved by trends, threats, or temptations. She is moved only by truth. And when she meets love again, true love, it will not ask her to abandon her alignment. It will recognize it. It will honor it. Because love that is meant for her will never come with confusion. It will come with clarity. It will be a continuation of her alignment, not a compromise of it. So, to the woman who stands at a crossroads today, choose not what feels good, but what feels true. Choose not what pleases the world, but what aligns with your soul. Because when you choose inner alignment, you don't just change your path, you change your power. And that is when success becomes inevitable. Not because you chased it, but because you became it. Not because you were chosen, but because you finally chose yourself, in the presence of God, in the fullness of truth. And in the power of inner alignment, there are many forms of love in this world. Love that arrives with grand gestures, love that grows in silence, love that ignites like fire and vanishes like smoke. But then there is divine love, a love that doesn't burn out, doesn't beg, doesn't break. It simply is. Many women spend their lives chasing the first kind of love, the kind that looks like fairy tales and sounds like promises. The kind that makes your heart race, your hands tremble, and your mind spin in a dance between fear and hope. And for a time, this love feels like everything. But eventually, she learns. She learns that human love, while beautiful, is often flawed. It carries with it conditions, spoken or unspoken. It often needs validation, reciprocation, and reassurance. It can be tangled with ego, routed in fear, or built upon need rather than truth. It's then that she starts to feel something stir within her. A quiet whisper, a different kind of pull. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it simply waits. That whisper is the voice of divine love, the love that doesn't need anything from her, because it already knows her, loves her, holds her. Divine love is not found in flowers, texts, or the gaze of another. It's found in the moments when she is completely alone, stripped of every identity the world gave her. No title, no makeup, no filter, no applause. And yet, in that stillness, she feels completely seen, completely held. She releases the idea that a man's love can define her worth. She releases the illusion that someone else must choose her to make her feel whole. She releases the stories that told her she had to earn love by shrinking, sacrificing, or suffering. She no longer chases love that comes in pieces. She no longer begs for love that leaves her empty. As she no longer tries to fix someone else in the hope that they will finally love her right. She starts to love herself not from ego, but from essence. She starts to honor her spirit as sacred, not as something to be negotiated. She starts to walk with God, not behind someone else's footsteps. The world may not understand this transformation. People may say, she's too independent, or she's too spiritual now, or she's not the same anymore. But that's the truth. She's not. She is no longer a woman looking for love. She is a woman walking in love, radiating it, carrying it, living it. Not just love for others, but love for truth, love for purpose, love for God. And here's the miracle: once she embraces divine love, she is no longer afraid to be alone. Because now, even in solitude, she feels full. Her joy is no longer borrowed from someone else's presence. Her peace is no longer dependent on someone else's approval. She begins to see love not as something to be gotten, but something to be given, without control, without expectation, without fear. She becomes the source, because the source lives in her. And when a man comes along, if he comes, he must be aligned with that same frequency. He must love her not from lack, but from wholeness. He must recognize her not just as a body, but as a soul. Because now, she cannot accept anything less than truth. She cannot fake connection, tolerate emotional poverty, or settle for love that asks her to choose them over herself, or over God. Human love can be a beautiful experience, but without divine love as its foundation, it is fragile. It breaks at the first sign of struggle. But when love is rooted in the divine, it becomes unbreakable. It flows through storms, through silence, through change, and still remains. It is not earned. It is not taken away. It is not based on what she does or how she looks. It is based on who she is, a daughter of the divine loneliness. The word itself feels cold, heavy, and often painful. It is whispered in moments of silence, cried into pillows in the middle of the night, and hidden behind forced smiles in crowded rooms. For most of the world, loneliness is a wound, something to escape, to fill, to fix. For the woman who chooses God over a man, loneliness is not just a feeling, it becomes a companion. It follows her in the early days of separation, in the long walks without someone's hand in hers, in the quiet evenings when no one texts to ask how, and in that surrender, she begins to see something unexpected. Loneliness is not empty. It is full, full of truth, full of light, full of revelations she could never have received in the noise of companionship. It is not about being unloved. It is not a verdict that she is unworthy or forgotten. It is, in fact, proof that she is walking towards something higher. Loneliness becomes the sacred silence between her old self and the woman she is becoming. You see, when a woman chooses alignment, when she says yes to God and no to the attachments that no longer serve her, she must first walk alone. Not because no one wants her, but because no one can walk that path for her. It is hers alone. In this passage, she learns the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a physical state. Being lonely is emotional. But it doesn't always mean something is missing. Sometimes it means she is being cleared. There is a kind of loneliness that comes when you no longer betray yourself just to feel connected, when you refuse to shrink to be loved, when you stop performing for approval. This is not the loneliness of emptiness. It is the loneliness of integrity. She will scroll through photos of couples, feel the sting of silence when others have someone to call, and question whether she made the right decision. But even in that ache, something deeper is happening. Her soul is being rebuilt. She begins to meet herself, not the self others wanted, not the self she created to be liked, but her real self, the one who laughs loudly when no one's around, the one who dreams, writes, sings, weeps, the one who's been waiting all these years to be seen. And what she sees in that mirror begins to change. She sees not a woman who has been left behind, but a woman who had the courage to walk ahead. Not a woman who is unloved, but a woman who chose not to settle. Not a woman who is broken, but a woman who is becoming whole. The world will not understand this kind of solitude. Is that she is not waiting to be found. She is finding herself. There is a sacred strength that grows in the soil of loneliness, a resilience that cannot be faked, a beauty that cannot be dimmed, a presence that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. This woman who chose truth over company, God over approval, solitude over shallow connection, she is not lonely. She is in transition. And yes, she still longs for love. That desire hasn't disappeared. But now, it is no longer desperated. It is serene. It is free. She is not looking for someone to complete her. She is whole. She is not asking someone to save her. She is held. She is not hoping someone will choose her. She has already chosen herself, and in doing so, she has chosen God. This is the great secret of loneliness. When embraced, it doesn't make her weaker. It makes her unshakable. Because once a woman learns to stand in her own presence and feel full, no one can offer her less than what she gives herself. No one can manipulate her with attention. No one can bait her with crumbs of affection. No one can enter her life unless they come with truth, peace, and respect. There are few choices in life as difficult and as powerful as the decision to walk alone. Not because one wants to, not because one enjoys the silence, but because something within whispers that the path forward cannot include what was once familiar. For the woman who chooses God over a man, that choice is rarely glamorous. It is not celebrated in real time. It does not come with applause or support. In fact, it often feels like standing at the edge of the world with no clear road ahead and no one beside her. It is terrifying. And yet, it is also holy. This is the moment where courage is not defined by action, but by abandonment. Letting go of what is safe, what is known, what is comforting, and choosing what is true. There's something deeply misunderstood about walking alone. People assume it means you've been left, that no one wanted you, that you've failed at love, at connection, at life. But walking alone is rarely about being rejected. It's about refusing to reject yourself. You see, there comes a point when a woman can no longer betray her soul just to keep someone in her life. The conversations start to hurt more than heal. The love begins to feel like a cage. And the longer she stays, the more she fades. Her spirit becomes quiet. Her dreams start to dim. Her laughter becomes less free. She walks away from the man who loved her, but only on his terms. She walks away from the people who praised her, as long as she stayed agreeable. She walks away from the patterns that made her feel loved but never safe. This walk is not a stroll. It is a shedding. It is peeling away layers of identity that were built for others. It is carrying the grief of leaving behind what once felt like home. And yet, with each step, she gets lighter. She begins to feel herself again, not the version that was molded by desire or expectation or fear, but the woman who has always been buried underneath. Not the kind of courage that climbs mountains or slays dragons, but the quieter kind. The kind that says no when everything in her wants to say yes just to avoid the pain. The kind that chooses silence over shouting. The kind that walks away, not because she stopped loving, but because she started listening. She listens to her intuition, to her spirit, to the divine voice within that has been whispering all along, and in that lonely walk, she is not without fear. She still has nights where she cries. She still wonders if she made a mistake. She still scrolls past memories that ache like open wounds. But something deeper has taken root, peace. It is not loud, not constant, not dramatic. It's a quiet knowing, a sacred calm. The kind of peace that says, even if you're alone, you are not lost, because this path, though empty of others, is full of purpose. What most people don't see is that this kind of solitude is not punishment. It is preparation. It is where she learns the sound of her own voice again. It is where she realizes she is capable of her own happiness. It is where she understands that love is not something to be begged for. It is something to become. And once she becomes it, once she fills her own cup, she is no longer thirsty, no longer desperate, no longer willing to settle for companionship at the cost of her truth. Because she has tasted the strength of her own spirit. She has walked through the fire of letting go. She has learned to stand in silence without crumbling. And now, She cannot be bought with breadcrumbs. She cannot be swayed by sweet words if they are not followed by sacred actions. She cannot be controlled by the fear of being alone, because she knows she is never not in the form of lightning bolts or loud signs, but in the quiet moments, in the breath between tears, in the warmth that comes when she least expects it, in the doors that open after every door she bravely closed. She begins to recognize the difference between love and attachment, between longing and alignment, between someone who fills a void and someone who expands her soul. This kind of courage does not come from books or advice. It is earned in the trenches of heartbreak, in the valley of decision, in the sacred space between who she was and who she is becoming. And maybe, someday, she meets someone who can walk beside her without dimming her light. Maybe she doesn't. Either way, she is whole. There is a quiet war inside every woman, the war between who she truly is and who the world wants her to be. It begins early. The pressure to be polite, agreeable, pleasing, to smile when she wants to scream, to nod when her soul wants to say no, to fit in even when it crushes her spirit. She learns to adjust her tone, shrink her dreams, and soften her opinions, not out of weakness, but out of conditioning. Because somewhere along the way, she was taught that being loved means being liked, and being liked meaning less of herself. But there comes a moment, a powerful, sacred moment, when a woman begins to feel the cost of this trade, the cost of approval, the price of constantly performing for others. She starts to realize that the love she receives for being easy, nice, or sweet is not love at all. It is applause for her silence. It is validation for a version of her that doesn't even exist. She begins to hear her own voice again, not the rehearsed, filtered version, but the raw, real, untamed voice that speaks from her spirit, the voice that says, "This isn't me." The voice that dares to be honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable. The voice that isn't looking to be liked, but to be free. It is not an easy choice. It's not the kind that makes people cheer. In fact, it's the choice that often gets her criticized, misunderstood, or even abandoned. But it is the only choice that leads to peace. Because the truth is, approval is addictive. It feels good. It's a hit of belonging, of being seen, of feeling wanted. But it's also fragile. One wrong word, one honest moment, one unpopular truth, and it disappears. And the woman who was living for it, she disappears too. Authenticity, on the other hand, is uncomfortable, but solid. It may cost her relationships, jobs, followers, or likes. But it gives her something that no amount of approval ever could: integrity. The feeling of being true to herself. The peace of not having to wear a mask. The power of not needing others to tell her who she is. A woman who chooses authenticity doesn't wake up every morning craving acceptance. She wakes up with a question burning in her soul. She no longer wants to be praised for being agreeable. She wants to be respected for being real. She no longer wants to impress. She wants to express. She no longer needs the room to applaud. She needs her soul to rest. And this kind of authenticity cannot be faked. It cannot be copied. It comes from doing the deep, often painful work of unlearning approval and relearning self-trust. She begins to speak differently. Not louder, but clearer. Her no becomes sacred. Her yes becomes intentional. She doesn't over-explain. She doesn't soften her edges to make others comfortable. She doesn't apologize for the space she takes up, the things she feels, or the fire in her voice. The people who once celebrated her for being nice may start to fall away. Not because she's changed into something bad, but because she's finally stopped performing. And performance was all they ever truly loved, and in that clarity, she begins to attract different energy. People who value truth over comfort, people who are not threatened by her light, people who are not trying to fix, mold, or dilute her, but who see her and say, she cries when she's hurting, she says no when it's too much, she walks away when her soul is at stake. She doesn't fake connections, friendships, or peace. She lives in truth, not illusion. And when people ask her, "Aren't you afraid to lose people by being so real?" she smiles and says, "That success is the car we drive, the number in our bank account, the titles we collect, and the applause we receive. We've been trained to measure our worth by how productive we are, how perfect we look, and how much attention we gather. And so, most of us spend our lives chasing. But what if true success has nothing to do with chasing? What if has nothing to do with we earn, and everything to do what we become? There is a deeper kind of success, one not found in numbers or noise, but in stillness, in alignment, in spiritual fulfillment. A success that cannot be touched or measured, but can be felt in every breath, every choice, every moment of peace. That says, for the woman who chooses God over a man, this kind of success becomes her guiding light. She is no longer chasing someone else's version of happiness. She is no longer seeking to impress the world. Instead, she begins to ask different questions, and those questions shift everything. Because spiritual success is quiet. It doesn't always come with rewards you can post online. It may not come with promotions, diamonds, or attention. It often comes with something harder to grasp, but far more meaningful: inner peace. Peace in your decisions. Peace in your relationships. Peace in the space between where you are and where you're going. When a woman begins to prioritize this kind of success, her life looks different. She may leave a high-paying job because it crushed her spirit. She may walk away from a relationship that was secure but made her small. She may choose the path that makes no sense to others, but makes complete sense to her soul. Success to her is being able to sleep at night with a clear heart. It's being able to look in the mirror and feel proud of who she's becoming. It's the ability to make choices that honor her growth, not her image. But she is no longer building her life on the foundation of fear, approval, or comparison. She is building from the inside out, from a place of wholeness, from divine guidance, from her connection to something bigger than herself. And that connection, to God, to purpose, to peace, becomes her source of energy, direction, and clarity. She begins to realize that success is not about climbing ladders. It's about planting roots. It's about becoming someone she respects, not someone the world rewards. It's about trading ambition for alignment. She may not always get the outcome she envisioned, but she gets the outcome that grows her, strengthens her, and prepares her for what's next. Because success that is rooted in spirit is not about control. It's about co-creation, from knowing she is exactly where she's supposed to be, from trusting that what is meant for her will not require her to betray herself, from choosing rest when the world says grind, from choosing depth when the world says surface, from choosing God when the world says self. She chose the harder path, the quieter road, the lonelier walk, but in doing so, she discovered a kind of love the world could never offer. Divine love, a love that did not need her to perform, please, or prove anything. A love that saw her, held her, and called her home to herself. She no longer chases validation, attention, or superficial success. She doesn't shrink to be accepted or sacrifice her truth to be chosen. She has learned that being chosen by God is greater than being desired by man. Her authenticity is no longer a risk. It is her revolution. Her silence is no longer empty. It is sacred space. Her solitude is no longer shameful. It is her sanctuary. And her success is no longer defined by what she owns, but by the peace she carries, the truth she lives, and the God she walks with.